G'day, I'm Owen. You've joined this week's edition of the Pub Test, where we are continuing our Jack the Ripper suspect series. And in this one, we are looking at the very interesting case of James Sadler. So who was he, and how does he fit into the Jack the Ripper saga? Well, James was born around 1838. There's give or take a couple of years. We're not 100% sure on that. In this video, I'm going to refer to him by his preferred name being Tom. Middle name Thomas, but just simplified that down to Tom Sadler. Now, young Tom probably didn't have the best starts like so many people back then. Now, his father died of an illness when he was very young. His mother gave him some education. She said, I taught him how to read, but he couldn't write apparently. But he did go to school up until the age of 15 before dropping out and starting work. His grandfather was a ship captain. So he would sail, transport ships. And it seems that that's the type of life that Tom wanted for himself. His mother not so keen. But regardless, he does join that exotic life of sailing on ships. When he came back, he would give half his money. So when he's returned back to England, he would give half his money to his mother that he'd made. So we could see that he was being rather dutiful. And quite a nice young bloke, really. He does get married. And interestingly, he's not always on the ship, so he takes some land work here and there, but often he would go away, has a few children, and in the 1880s, they were living around Whitechapel, in Bucks Row at one point as well, actually in 1888. But the relationship with his wife was probably not as solid as the relationship that he had with his mother. It's said that she found a knife on him one time and hid it and refused to tell him where it was, which might seem a bit odd. But Tom was probably the quintessential drunken sailor. Yeah, she said he could be the nicest bloke on the face of the earth, but if he sort of got into it, had a few too many of the older rums, well, his personality would change and he would become very, very aggressive and violent. Their relationship strained to the point that she moved away from London and back to her mother's house where all the kids were as well. Now, Tom, he did try and make amends on a few occasions. And because no doubt he could be, appearing to be really, really nice, well, she would take him back at times. But in 1891, a woman of the night, Frances Coles, is found dying in the street. Now, what is of note is that Tom and her had a bit of a relationship going on. Not a customer-client relationship, but a little bit more closer than that. So Tom is seen leaving her lodging house at 1:30 in the morning. And the landlord saw him leave. Frances leaves by herself not long after. And then few hours later, Tom comes back to the lodging house and says, look, can you just let me in for the night? And the landlord looks at him and says, no way, buddy, because he had obviously been in a scrap. He had injuries. He was bleeding. And the landlord said, how about you go to the Whitechapel hospital and get yourself checked out? So he does go down to the hospital and he stays the night there. They let him sleep basically in what we would call the emergency room. But because of this, when Francis is found passed away, they pick him up and charge him with her murder. Now, what also happened is a paper ran a story saying that this Tom Tom Sadler could have been Jack the Ripper. Not only has he murdered this poor woman, fairly strong case against him when you look at the surface of it, but he probably was Jack the Ripper as well, and people tried to lynch him, literally. They were storming the police station. The police managed to get him away safely, but he did sustain a few hits around the face at the very, very least. Now, what is very fascinating here to me is that Superintendent Swanson, who was in charge of the Jack the Ripper crimes, everything went across his desk, is actually interviewing him about this murder of Frances Coles. And in reading the statement that Tom makes, it reads to me like actually the Swanson wrote it, because maybe Tom never really learnt to write. But he's reading it back to him and he has to affirm that what was written in the statement is true. In this statement of the night that he claimed what happened is that he went back down to the docks, was attacked, got involved in 2 fights at 2 separate instances, said, I may have been attacked with a knife or a bottle, and that's how he got these cuts. Now, the police officer who first came across him, when he heard he mentioned a knife, he said, oh, so you carry a knife, and searched him. He said, no, mate, I have not carried a knife for years. People know that I no longer carry a knife with me. Well, he obviously was known in the past to carry one, which we probably need to touch on a little bit more. He gets basically the Seafarer Union, because he's a worker that travels on the boats, they actually support his defense and prove that he could not have committed the crime of Frances Coles. So he is acquitted. Yet, he gets back together with his wife. Now, he sues the papers for the Jack the Ripper claims, and this paper had to pay him money. And I think when they were writing out the check, he said, my best friends call me Cash, so they handed him cash, and now he had some money. That may have encouraged his wife to come back and live there for a while, but it's not good. She, again, is threatened with a knife. She mentions this, the police come and pick him up and investigate him a bit further, but they had a lodger staying in the house as well, and he then, at another time, reported Tom to the police for being aggressive and violent towards his wife. They do keep him in prison overnight, just for one night, for keeping the peace, and that was in 1893, so they're still in the London area. But oddly, that's actually the last we officially know about what happened to James Thomas Sadler. It is suggested that after this last run-in with the police, being taken away and kept locked up overnight, he's decided to take up a potentially risky venture by going on a boat to smuggle weapons into South America, because there was some wars going on there, and that could be quite lucrative. But you see, the funny thing is, we actually don't really know what happened after 1893. There was a James Sadler that passed away in 1910, and there was a Thomas Sadler that passed away in 1906, but it's possible that neither of them was this particular bloke. But what about the Jack the Ripper crimes? Now, we said the paper accused him of it. He was exonerated, by the way, for this murder of Frances Coles, though no one ever was charged for her crime. That has still remained unsolved. And remembering, the police had said clearly that Jack the Ripper was no more, but here's another woman of the night passing away unsolved. Now, I think it is important to make a very important statement here. Yes, they did look into him as being Jack the Ripper, but a captain on one of the boats said that he was sailing at the time for that whole duration when the Jack the Ripper crimes happened. Yet, it's stated that his marriage broke down in 1888 in August due to a quarrel that they had, which meant that he wasn't on a boat when that captain said he was. He may have been on the boat maybe after August, but he definitely wasn't on the boat before. And that little detail surprises me that no one picked up on it. So it's likely, in fact very probable, that he was in Whitechapel. That he had a bit of a temper, particularly when he was drunk. So I find it fascinating that that has sort of been missed, swept under the carpet. No one's jumped up and said, hang on. Why aren't we looking at him? He was basically the last known person to see Francis Coles. Like, he could have easily waited round the corner or just been nearby. If he was in one of these fits, in one of these moods, why did people know he no longer carried a knife? Was he told he maybe shouldn't carry a knife anymore because he's a danger to others? And what happened to him after that final arrest? Well, as I say, we really do not know. But for me, he is a bit of an enigma in this Jack the Ripper saga. Could he have committed a couple of the crimes? I'd say it could very well be likely. But what do you think about Tom Sadler being Jack the Ripper? Is he credible? Or do you actually have some more information about his whereabouts during 1888 or even after 1893? Well, let us know down there in comments. I found it really fascinating looking at this bloke because you got the two sides. You got the really nice guy, but then get a couple of rums into him and he turns quite nasty. So thank you very much for watching. It genuinely is appreciated, and all your support for this channel has been absolutely amazing, can I just say. Smash that subscribe button. Get into it. Knock it out. I'm Owen. You've been watching The Pub Test, and we will see you on the next one.